Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Beverly Hills Bar Association panel on esports. My name is Greg Zbylut. I am the Secretary of the Entertainment section of Beverly Hills Bar this year. I'd like to welcome you, all of you. And I think we have a really fabulous panel lined up here today to talk about esports. It's a lot to talk about. We've got a very, relatively speaking, short period of time in which to cover it. So we'll try to cover a bunch of stuff. We're probably going to do a lot of kind of 30,000 foot view of everything as opposed to getting into detail. And if you're interested in the topic, please let me know. We would love to have more of these panels, and we would love to find out what parts we should focus in around. As I said, we have a great panel today. You will notice on your Zoom screen, you should see Q&A and chat. You can ask questions. We would prefer that you ask them through the Q&A panel. Just so that our moderator doesn't have to keep switching back and forth to try and keep up with everybody's answers or questions. I anticipate there'll probably be a lot. So we probably won't be able to get everyone's questions today. Hopefully we can address most of them, but no promises. And with that, I'm also going to say that the entertainment section has meetings monthly, the first Wednesday of every month at 8:30 a.m. And like every Beverly Hills meeting right now, it is Zoom. So it is this kind of a meeting with feedback, and you can actually participate as opposed to today where you're just going to be able to ask questions via the Q&A panel. We welcome everyone to join us on our meetings. We look forward to sharing viewpoints and ideas for programs. That's how we set up these programs, or we get ideas for programs. So we do encourage you, if you're interested, to please participate and join us. The meetings generally last between 45 minutes and an hour, so it's a nice start to the day. And apparently we have great breakfasts at your own home. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Debbie Perry, who will introduce all of our panelists to you. Take it away, Deb.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think it's going to be a really interesting panel. We've got some terrific folks on the panel. I've seen some of them speak before. And with that, I'm going to start by introducing Mary Tuck, who is the Vice President of Legal at Activision Blizzard. She's been with the company for over 10 years and has been working on its esports initiatives for over 4 years, including on the core team responsible for designing the structure for the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League. Mary also manages legal for the company's consumer products division. And prior to working on esports, Mary managed the company's litigation and IP. Next, we have Erika Georgiou at FaZeClan. FaZeClan, she's Associate General Counsel at FaZeClan, and FaZeClan is one of the most prominent and influential sports teams in the world, known for disruptive original content and hyper-engaged global fans, over 215 million across social platforms. FaZeClan currently has 7 professional esports rosters in Fortnite, Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, PUBG Mobile, Rainbow Six, and FIFA. And did I spell that? Was it FIFA or FIFA? And 85 influential personalities consisting of world-class gamers, engaging content creators, and NBA, NFL, and music stars. Erika advises FaZeClan in all aspects of its business, including athlete agreements, brand partnerships, financings, disputes, streaming social media content, league and tournament agreements, merchandising, and intellectual protection and monetization. Welcome, Erika.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jason Wu. Jason is the Chief Strategy Officer and General Manager for Next Generation Esports, or NGE. It's an esports publisher that works directly with AAA video game IP holders and world-class distribution networks to produce premier esports content worldwide. To give you an example, in 2018, NGE produced over 4 billion consumed minutes of competitive esports entertainment. Jason currently leads strategic planning, partnership, relationships, and day-to-day operations for NGE and its many video game partners and networks. So welcome, Jason. Next, we have Kevin Young. He's Associate General Counsel at Twitch. Kevin has extensive experience in the digital media industry, working with and supporting various content initiatives and teams at Twitch. He began his career in private practice as a capital markets attorney at Weil Gotshal and is it Manges? Okay, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. And Morrison and Forster in San Francisco. Kevin received his law degree from Cornell University. Welcome, Kevin. Next, we have Matt Hillman, who is just added on to the panel. So welcome, Matt. He is co-founder of Cut and Sew LA and Zone Gaming. Cut and Sew LA is a full-service marketing agency working with both Fortune 500s and startups to scale businesses through innovative campaigns. Recently, the Cut and Sew company launched Zone Gaming, a creative agency and venture studio sitting at the intersection of gaming and culture. At Zoned, Matt and his team are consulting for, investing in, and building some of the leading brands in the gaming ecosystem. Welcome, Matt. And finally, we have Conor Beesemyer, who is an agent at WME. He's a former talent manager and partner manager for FaZeClan, and he's now an agent in the digital department at WME with a focus in gaming. At FaZeClan, he had managed some of the most popular YouTubers and gamers worldwide, along with helping manage some of the first non-endemic brands in the gaming space. They all collectively navigate a partnership with the world's largest gaming organization. These experiences have paved the way for Conor's transition to WME, where he's hoping to help the talent and industry alike grow and mature holistically while riding this rocket trajectory of esports and gaming. When he's not working, Conor may be found on his bike, surfboard, or with friends, hanging out 6 feet apart, sharing stories about anything pre-2020. So welcome, Conor, and I'm going to turn it over to him to start it off with the overview of the esports ecosystem. Welcome, Conor.
Thank you for that, Debbie, and thank you for all the work to you guys for helping put this on. Hi, everyone, and due to the unique circumstances here, I think we're all excited to be here digitally on Zoom and hoping to educate you guys a bit more and talk about gaming at large. I wanted to start off here by giving an intro to the gaming ecosystem, starting by kind of providing definition and delineation between gaming and esports, because I feel like at a dinner table conversation, a lot of the times they're kind of bundled together into one conversation. When gaming in the games industry kind of is, more holistic approach, an umbrella in which everything kind of fits underneath. And esports is very much just the competitive aspect within gaming, within the teams, leagues, and pro players. So that said, I wanted to bring up a couple topics in the news recently around gaming. I know COVID has accelerated a lot of the growth and numbers across the board. So here's some hopefully interesting numbers for you guys. Twitch stream viewership has been up about 50% according to Streamlab data. Maybe Kevin can attest to that or deny that later. Fortnite in-game events. Fortnite or Epic Games has been, really good, I think, about integrating different celebrities and events within the game for people to experience actually playing Fortnite. And then, of course, streaming the content for other people to view it globally, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. But they recently, during COVID, did an event, the astronomical in-game event with Travis Scott, which drew 12 million live viewers, breaking tons of records. Platform deals have been a big conversation in the media recently, which had started with Ninja going to Mixer. There's some bidding wars going on with bunches of talent at Twitch, YouTube, etc. We'll touch on some of this later as well. Cable networks throughout the past few months have looked to esports to help fill some of the programming that they have been lacking, so to say. I don't know. For those of you who do watch ESPN, cornhole has become a recent sport. So esports has found an opportunity there, and hopefully it sticks. Hopefully there's ways to integrate it in a meaningful way to linear programming to supplement the online viewership that we all see. Major brands have come into the space in a big way, sponsoring leagues, teams, players alike. And these are including major non-endemic brands who are spending a lot of money now to really ride this wave with everyone else and develop that relationship with the core audience, which throughout my years in gaming, I've gotten to know the audience as one of the most authentic, sometimes toxic, and engaged audience that there is. A lot of people have probably heard about some of the prize pools that have been going around in esports. Upwards of $30+ million for some titles such as Dota International and the Fortnite World Cup, in which Kyle Buga, at the age of 16, took home a $3 million prize pool. The League of Legends Championship in 2018, it's a bit of a throwback of a couple years, but I think this number is worth noting, had 100 million viewers across television and online audience. The esports audience is projected to hit over 600 million online and television viewers in 2020. This article came out a couple months ago, so I'd like to believe that this number is going to be probably much higher. And also, last note here is that this time frame of last year, between February and July of 2019, there were 27 reported funding rounds, which equaled $284 million. And this is just reported funding rounds, so there are probably plenty of non-reported, and this number might be much higher than where it's at. And year over year, I feel like the number is also higher this year. Before we dive into the discussion, I wanted to just highlight a couple of the major key players within the industry. And to help liken it to traditional entertainment, you have publishers such as Epic Games, Riot, and Activision, who can be likened to a studio. They are the ones greenlighting projects, which are the games, and really helping bring them to life. And then you have the developers, which could be similar to a producer. The developers are the people behind the scenes who are working long hours to really bring together and bring alive these games that we play and love today. Underneath, you have organizations. Organizations are the brands bringing a ton of lift to brand awareness, I think, around esports and gaming as a whole. Organizations include the likes of FaZeClan, 100 Thieves, Energy, etc. Within organizations, you have esports teams and then the content creators. Esports teams are the professional side, driving forward clout, so to say, within the esports space, bringing home the championship titles. And then you have the content creators who are, more the entertainers. These are the creators who are streaming every day, creating videos every day, and really engaging with the audience for these organizations every day to drive up the brand value as a whole. And as many people have read about, creating these incredible social followings for themselves and also the organizations that they're a part of. And then around all this, you have the leagues, such as the Overwatch League, Call of Duty League, LCS, which would be League of Legends, and plenty of other leagues in between. And a bit of what we will touch on today is the difference between franchise leagues and non-franchise leagues. So with that said, we will dive into our discussion. I think with everything going on, it's only appropriate to kind of start with how COVID and this pandemic has helped shift the industry as a whole, in terms of growth of viewership, attraction of a mainstream audience to gaming, and what that's meant for productions, leagues, players, celebrities, etc. And I wanted to start this off by asking Jason, on the production side, with in-home productions, how have you guys seen at NGE a change in strategy or really just a change in production in the industry? Because I know for myself as a viewer, it's definitely been interesting to watch, but also really compelling to see how well I think productions have shifted within the industry. So I'll open it up to you, Jason.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Conor. Thanks for having me. For us, obviously, as an industry, online streaming and digital streaming is really kind of the foundation of esports, right? We have live events, but really that's where a lot of consumption happens. And so for us, really the impact that we saw from a production perspective really were, as we work with IP holders like Activision, Blizzard, Mary, and Twitch and others, is to figure out a way to safely do that. Previously we had both talent as well as our production operators come into our studio here in Burbank, California, to actually operate these shows. On March 12th, we had to stop that for obvious reasons to everybody here. And we had to figure out a way to shift from in-space production to at-home production. In the first couple of weeks, what we saw was kind of a refocusing on efforts. We thankfully have been prepared for not necessarily a black swan event like COVID or exogenous event like this, but what we did was in advance was actually create technology internally so that we didn't require people to physically be in studio. So that's the kind of the overarching theme. In terms of actual production, we've actually seen an uptick of production. We've been seeing an uptick of requests from our clients and our partners to actually do more. And that's based large in part it's safer to be at home. And, you know, aside from Zoom calls and playing the video games, watching them will increase.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. And on that note, Mary, have you, on your end, had to deal with any, I guess, issues on the legal end with a lot of these at-home productions or productions as a whole, or within the league and the tournament structures? Have any of this, has this come up on your end at all?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of with Jason, we had kind of an abrupt change that we all had to scramble for, and that was going from, you know, in the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League, we really leaned in heavily to this local event, city-based model, where we were having all of our, at least most of our esports events in the local cities of the teams associated with each of the leagues. So we had to quickly pivot from that model to one that went online only. So it was a little bit of a, you know, it was a struggle, but it was also an opportunity, because we found ourselves in a pretty unique situation relative to traditional sports, where we could in fact still play, and we could in fact still hold our matches, just in a very different way than we originally envisioned. So we had a little bit of a moment in time where we figured out how to get equipment to everyone in their different locations. For a minute, we also tried sort of chasing where the virus was and which hotspots existed, and we soon learned, unfortunately, that we were losing that battle, and went to truly online. And it's actually been an interesting and opportunistic time for us, relative to just how do you reimagine doing these esports events entirely online, which of course for years it's been happening that way, originally just in the games themselves, and then now, you know, with a lot of esports activities online. So, you know, we've been really lucky, and I think been able to entertain people during this time where people have more time to actually spend online. So from that standpoint, it was logistically very difficult. There was also, from a legal standpoint, things to consider in terms of existing contracts. I think every lawyer got the millions of memos around force majeure provisions, and why don't we have one? What does it mean if we don't have one? What does ours even mean? Is the word pandemic in your force majeure clause? And if it's not, what does that mean? And just, you know, got a lot of points around that. It was an interesting lesson in force majeure. So we looked at a lot of our, you know, Jason probably lived through this a lot of our production agreements. What do we do about those? We want to keep good relationships with those vendors. And so, you know, there's the legal side, and then there's the business side that's important as well. And there's a lot on the sponsorship side as well, which is a big piece in the esports ecosystem. A lot of sponsors were envisioning that they were going to do local activations, you know, controllers at the events, things like that. So that was another thing that legal and the business had to partner with and think through. Once again, are there force majeure provisions? Are there make good provisions in the contracts? And those are things kind of like pointers, I guess, for folks in the esports space to consider going forward, making sure in your contracts you're thinking about what force majeure provisions you have. Do you have make good provisions so that you're not essentially giving money back to the sponsors where you don't need to, because now you've got all these online opportunities, and maybe there's other space. You know, you've got multiple different players in multiple different locations that can carry your controller or sit in your seat, or, you know, whatever the various different sponsorship activations that are possible. So it was definitely, it's been a very busy time, and we feel very lucky, relatively speaking, given all that's considered, that we can at least entertain people during this time.
Definitely. Jason, I wanted to bring this back to you on the production side with, you know, what Mary's saying. When considering the consistency of, you know, the events, and, you know, I think with gamers, a big concern is the quality of like the gameplay and basically making sure that there's no hitch in kind of the speeds, network speeds, or et cetera at home. I'm just wondering, you know, on your end, have you seen that been able to be kind of controlled and the experience to be able to be maintained, or has there been kind of a setback there?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for other productions, but I can say that, you know, two of the main things, at least from my side of the world, are most important for any production, aside from making sure that it's a quality environment, is the stability of the internet connection as well as the power. I mean, it doesn't really sound that interesting, but it's certainly important. So we've actually built workflows and proprietary workflows for every project that we work on with clients to ensure, so far as we can, you know, we can't really ensure that a transformer won't explode, which, by the way, has happened on one of our shows, but as many mitigation strategies as possible. And so certainly that, you know, I think that's something that we've seen increase over time, because as you mentioned, in-home productions are occurring, whereas before everybody was in our studio. That no longer is the case. People are at home, and depending on their ISP servers and their ability to actually broadcast out, we needed to make sure that, at least from our point of view, that we were resilient. One of the projects that we actually worked on in the first couple of days of COVID was we actually partnered, this public knowledge, we partnered with Twitch directly, or we actually assisted Twitch in their fundraiser, their streamer aid, in which they raised for the WHO organization over $2 million to go towards COVID. And a lot of that was them kind of pointing us in the direction and us trying to figure out a way to do that, because that was a critical moment and still remains to be a critical moment to make sure that those that are working on the front lines are being supported directly.
And I want to come back to that, because I think, you know, a big kind of uptake and transition that we've seen here is programming, Kevin, on Twitch, and, you know, with productions, et cetera, moving at home and kind of refiguring how the space is moving forward with production. But Mary, to your point earlier with partners and sponsorships and having to kind of pivot a little bit, take a pause, you know, talking about force majeure and how to move forward and where it's warranted, where it's not. Would you say overall, like, you guys have kind of found a way to move forward with most partners and make them happier? I mean, I know viewership has increased across the board, so I don't think they can be too unhappy there, but obviously there have been hiccups with maybe productions and ways to integrate some of their products. So overall, have you guys been able to kind of find ways to really work it out?
Yeah, and that's where I do think, luckily, being inherently an online product, the most value a lot of these sponsors are looking for is in the broadcast, is in the larger reach, and also in other online aspects that you have, whether it's social media of the teams or the players and their ability to continue to stream. So I think luckily we had those other places to pivot to. Again, I think because of the model we built with the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League, we'd still love eventually to get back to the place where we have the local live events, because there is still something about, you know, products being tangible and being available, and also having interesting and unique engagement with the sponsorship aspects and the live event and the fans associated with it. But, you know, generally speaking, we've been able to manage through it, and our sponsors have found other places.
Love that. Kevin, from Twitch's side with programming, I know during COVID, I think we've all seen an influx of celebrities, athletes and the like popping up on Twitch, and Erika with FaZe doing the Fight to Fund. You guys have had an incredible roster join that. So just kind of on a broad sense, what's that experience been like on your end in terms of kind of navigating different programming that's been happening, onboarding some of these celebrities? At this point, you know, I feel like you guys have almost maybe had too much outreach or inbound requests to come in and try to figure out different, you know, whether it's a deal structure, a partnership with a celebrity, programming. How's that kind of look like at a 3,000?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really confirm numbers, like you said, but we have seen increased usage of Twitch, over the past couple of weeks. And like what Jason and Mary said, that's kind of, inherent in the nature of our service, right? Which is an online only service. And, we're really trying to build a sense of community, right? In an online space that, normally you would be able to see and interact with on a physical level. And we're really trying to replicate that on a digital level, right? And so I think, it's increasingly seen, during this trying time and this, obviously this global pandemic, that people are looking for a way to be entertained, like what Mary said, and looking for connections and building community. And I think Twitch itself has always, emphasized that. We've been a really community first and, service. And so this COVID situation obviously has helped increase, usage in that sense. So we've seen increased, usage across the board from gaming and non-gaming too. We've made investments into music before, and we're continuing to invest into the music space. And like you mentioned too, right? Like celebrities are interested in coming on board and streaming, both sports athletes as well as musicians and other like kind of Hollywood celebrities as well, because they're at home and they have nothing else to do. So you might as well go online and try to connect with your fans and connect with your actual user base. So across the board, like you said too, we've seen an increased uptick, and it's we certainly weren't prepared for it, right? Because this was we weren't prepared for a global pandemic. But I think our business teams have really stepped up to the plate and really helped and provided support for all this new influx of increased demand, and we're just here to support them. So.
Yeah, power to you guys. I know there's been a ton of inbound requests. Erika, on your end at FaZe, I have seen a ton of content popping up and still going through. Are you scared every day for the different productions going on and the guys in the content house still creating content together and figuring out productions? How's it been with you guys?
So for us, and similar to everyone else, it's had a big impact on production. And for us specifically as a team, our focus is more on creating high quality content, and the inability to do that outdoors has been a little bit scary. Especially, we haven't had any sponsors try to pull out. In fact, like more often than not, it's more doubling down, and we're receiving inbound from maybe like traditional sports advertisers and people whose contracts are falling through, and they're trying to reallocate their marketing spend in the last minute. So we're getting all this inbound. We're trying to balance that with making sure that our production quality is still really high despite the restrictions. We are lucky that a lot of our gamers do live together in a house, so there's the benefit of that. And also everyone's working really hard to find creative ways to keep the content quality really high and make sure that we're able to fulfill all the contracts we take on. Like you said, the Fight to Fund, a Pro-Am with a bunch of celebrities, a bunch of gamers, tons of engagement and interaction because everyone's at home, and that becomes really exciting.
Matt, how's it going with you on during all this? I know you guys have a ton that you're up to across the board with NonEndemic Brands, and you guys are on more the brand side of things. So you can talk a little bit on your end, how you guys have kind of been navigating through this pandemic?
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, and I echo everything that everyone said. We've actually been doing a lot of work with individuals as well during this time. One of the things that we love to do is work with mainstream celebrities and help them kind of transition into a career in gaming. Two of the guys that we work with really closely are actually, part of FaZeClan as well, Josh Hart and Myers Leonard. And fortunately, both of them have been building really strong brands in gaming prior to COVID. So we were able to kind of build that playbook with them. But once this hit and NBA players and celebrities weren't being seen on TV, a couple days a week, and they weren't as forward facing in the world, they needed to find another way to continue to engage with their fans and continue to, stay relevant in a way. So to see the gaming industry come together and all of these philanthropic events was amazing. It seemed like, every day there was another, group of gamers or celebrities raising money. We worked on the FaZeClan one with them. And, obviously it seems like every organization just found a way to do good. And so I just think it was awesome. We've been fortunate to play a very small part in it. But I think, what we saw here in terms of celebrities and athletes entering the gaming space, I think this was hopefully just kind of the catalyst that they needed to really, take it seriously and continue building a brand in the space. And hopefully they learned a little bit about, what it means to really be a consistent streamer. This is the one time that they were able to take a bit of a break from their day jobs and really sort of put in those hours. so we're just really excited about kind of the fusion of these two spaces. And obviously gaming has its hardcore, demographic, but I think more athletes and celebrities bringing in their fans who might not be as familiar with the gaming space can only help benefit it. So.
Yeah. And Mary, I know Warzone has been a wildly successful launch, and a lot of celebrities and gamers alike have kind of taken the game and really it's become a favorite game in the community. So I just kind of want to, on that note, how do you guys think, what are some of the lasting effects? Mary, you brought up earlier that a lot of pivots are being made that are probably going to be lasting changes. Before we move on, what do you think are going to be some of the positive lasting changes that kind of come from this? Do you think a lot of this is sustainable, or some of it will revert back and plateau to where gaming kind of was? Or, do we think celebrities are going to stay in streaming on Twitch and playing and integrating with the community more?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to tell. I think, especially with Call of Duty, we have a pretty long history actually with involving celebrities and having celebrities, certainly the sports, athletes, et cetera, being involved and engaged on Call of Duty. And now it's more the streamers and influencers. So hopefully, at least from our standpoint, for our company, it continues. I know it's with sort of traditional advertising and traditional marketing dollars moving elsewhere into the digital space. That certainly seems to be a focus of many companies, ours included, and trying to find more organic and kind of grassroots streamer-oriented ways to use their marketing dollars. So it does feel like, to me, this moment in time aside, that's where it was already heading, and the trend is likely to continue.
Right, just expedited what was already happening.
Yeah.
Kevin, on your end, before we move on, in terms of programming, what do you think might be kind of lasting effects on Twitch? As we've seen an influx of a diverse slate of programming on Twitch. Do you think a lot of it will kind of sustain? Are you guys talking about new formats and different content acquisitions right now that are kind of in line with everything going on with COVID? Or is it, business as usual and just a ton of celebrities are on it right now and it's like, it's fun for what it is, but there's not much thought going into it?
I think, I'll echo what like Matt and Mary both said. Like, I feel like it was increasingly the trend towards, this direct connection between you as a celebrity, whether you're an athlete, a musician, or an actor, and, your fan base, right? And so we certainly hope and we think that, that continued engagement will, still stay after COVID, right? Obviously, I think, like what Matt mentioned, like they have nothing else to do, so they're streaming a lot now, and so we expect that to decrease as things open up a little bit more, and as your productions, like real live productions in Hollywood, start going back into play. You're obviously going to have less time to stream, right? But that being said, that connection that you build again with your fan base, is still going to be present, and I think we hope and we believe that people that come onto the service to start streaming will see the benefit there and see the engagement with our fan base and really fall in love with it and continue to stream after COVID, once COVID is addressed and solved. So
and I think an interesting point too, Kevin, is like it's not just gaming, which is cool. Like I saw that you guys had Party Next Door do his album release party on Twitch, and there wasn't a console in sight. It was just it's just really opening everyone's eyes up to the power of just live streaming in general and what live content does.
The idea of like that lean in kind of interactive nature is really what Twitch is really built on, right? And we're certainly not a lean back experience, unlike other, entertainment services out there. The idea is that you are leaning in, you're interacting with chat, you're interacting with the artist, whoever it might be, or, the celebrity and whatnot. And that interactive nature of what Twitch is, this COVID, shelter in place situation is just opening up that idea of Twitch to a whole new audience. And so we're continuing to kind of explore other opportunities there in that space that really lean into that change, the different, model, I guess, of engagement. So.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what happens here, depending on how long this goes, but wanted to move on to the next topic of discussion, which is broadcasting rights and IP. I know there've been a lot of kind of bidding exchanges for exclusive esports streaming rights on the different platforms. So again, at a broad level, Kevin, I wanted to open up this with you and kind of see where you guys are standing. What are some of the maybe issues you have when obtaining different IP rights to stream different esports on Twitch? I know Call of Duty recently moved to YouTube, so whatever you can share here.
Yeah, I would say that there's not a single engagement model that works for everybody, right? I think there's, we work with our partners across the space, like Mary, like, Riot, like other partners out there, like ESL, whatnot, depending on what makes sense for the moment, right? And so we're opportunistic in that sense, and we're not trying to dictate what that model really looks like, that engagement model. So, we're really trying to work with our, partners in that sense, because we feel like the overall, esports ecosystem can continue to increase in exposure, increase in revenue opportunities, increase in audience, right? And so any type of model that kind of, I think our whole theory and thesis is that like a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so the idea of exposing that initial endemic audience, or whatever you want to call it, to other, things would be more beneficial for us. So I can't really speak to specifics, but, we really kind of engage in a different model for different partners. We value all our business partners, including Activision, even though they moved to YouTube, but.
On your guys' end, and Mary, this, for you too, do you guys think the industry will trend towards more of a traditional, structure where we'll start to see longer and longer exclusivity agreements for content? Because I know in the past it's been shorter term agreements for the streaming rights, but do we think that there's a trend for longer 5 to 10 year deals maybe?
It's so hard to say. I think even the traditional sports worlds, I think, have already started moving away from that in part because the distribution avenues have changed so much. And I think it's actually one of the challenging things for lawyers in the space is when you're doing these media rights deals, how do you even slice up the rights these days? Because the traditional, there's the traditional linear, and then there's the TV everywhere, and then there's the streaming platforms. They're all colliding. And the traditional broadcasters have their own apps, they have their own platforms. And I think because of all of that, even the traditional sports deals, I would be surprised if when most of those come up for renewal, they in fact have those really lengthy, really big dollar, associated with them, because the eyeballs are so dispersed at this point, and the models are just all being broken up and changed. And so I'd be really surprised if you see really long-term deals in the esports space.
Kevin, on Twitch's side, I'm curious because I've noticed that you guys have acquired, rights to Pokemon and other various forms of content also that can air on Twitch's home screen. Do you see it trending towards a world where you guys are going to start acquire more IP like that? And I've noticed also a feature recently where streamers can stream and watch content with the viewers as well.
Yeah. So, so that's the Amazon, that's the watch parties. And so we worked with our brethren over at Amazon Prime to bring that content to the service, right? To allow, especially during COVID, right? You've seen a lot of people kind of adopt this model, and so the idea of again, leaning it into the experience and sharing with your community, that's just another kind of avenue for that, right? What that content is, instead of you streaming, playing, League of Legends or Valorant, right? Like you can sit there and watch a movie that's available on Prime with your viewers, right? And with your audience and whatnot. And so that's really the model that we're looking to engage in. The idea of a Pokemon marathon or whatnot, those are just to prove essentially what non-gaming looks like on Twitch, right? And it's still like a content that really resonates with our audience, right? So Pokemon obviously is anime and it's gaming related. We did a Doctor Who marathon. We've done a Power Rangers marathon. We've done like more nostalgic kind of marathons historically, but we think that resonates with our audience, our core audience, which is gaming or gaming adjacent, right? And so we're continuing to explore those opportunities, but like we're really trying to like set a model to show like what non-gaming looks like on Twitch. And so we'll work with partners like we announced yesterday that Marvel's streaming on Twitch as well, right? And so the idea is that like to showcase really what that looks like and how you can engage with your core audience. And so watch parties is another example of that. And so we'll continue to explore that, but it's certainly not something we're investing a lot into. So
okay. Erika, on your end with FaZeClan, do you guys, I guess this is kind of a collective question, but with esports and the rights kind of hopefully or transitioning, seeing a transition to linear as well as online, what are your thoughts there? Is there a way, whether Twitch can work in tandem, or does FaZe have hopes for content that could possibly live on linear, or how's that looking?
I don't think that's a focus for us right now. There is value that we can bring to parties in that we have a really loyal fan base. So if we do start streaming or producing content on a new platform, it can bring value to that platform. That typically happens with new platforms as opposed that are launching, as opposed to bringing an audience that's not used to traditional, linear television consumption back there. I think it would kind of also depend on whether esports grows up so that currently older generations start viewing it, and then maybe going linear would be more accessible to them, as opposed to if the current teenagers grow up and that's how it starts spanning multiple generations.
Fair. I guess we can switch over to intellectual property, trademarks, and protection here, because I think there's a lot of interesting movements happening here across the board, and it's tough to address this in the short amount of time that we're given. But Mary, I think you guys have done a really good job with the leagues and how you guys have kind of really matured and structured the leagues around the players, the content that's developed with the leagues. What are some issues? Have you guys encountered issues with people trying to host their own or how do you work with maybe other organizers who are trying to host their own tournaments? How have you taken control of that? How have you guys kind of tried to take control of that in the space?
Yeah, that's one that's gets a little sticky, and even has different policies across the Activision, Blizzard, King companies. Blizzard has a very front-facing, what they call community tournament license, and there's basically parameters that it sets forth, prize pool limits, etc., whereby pretty much anyone who fits into those criteria can apply online and go run a community tournament license. And then beyond that, there's more of an affirmative licensing process for anything that gets beyond this community level. And Activision has generally treated it the same way. They don't have the same front-facing community license that's published out there to the world, but there's been plenty of licensed tournaments on the Activision side. It gets tough though, because there's a lot of interest out there, and you want to make sure the community is being thought about in terms of your enforcement policies. And so it's one where the business has to be thoughtful in thinking about, okay, if this isn't licensed, is there anything problematic around it? Should there be a reach out to a company for running it without permissions, etc.? And I know different companies have different approaches with respect to that. I think I've seen at least Riot publish similar kind of community license guidelines for some of its games. And then, there's also the general EULA that underlies the video games. So regardless of whether or not there's a published community license or a published tournament license, there's still the typical EULA. And again, not all games across the board have the same EULA provisions. Most, though, I think do have a prohibition against commercializing use of the video game by any individual user of the game. So there's that piece of it and again, whether or not a publisher decides to in fact enforce those terms is a whole nother question that I think each publisher looks at differently. Depends on if there's a conflict commercially or a PR problem for the company to go after a particular company.
Erika, on your end, with FaZe being a global brand, and I think, something that everyone encounters in this industry is the fact that gaming is so global, and it's tough to keep an eye on your brand at length and in every region that it might be in. With FaZe being as popular as it is globally, for what you can say, how have you guys tried to help manage the process of where your guys' products and stuff has ended up? Have you guys had some interesting encounters with that, whether, it's FaZe products popping up internationally, who knows where, and how are you guys working on that?
So a big lift that our team has done has to implement a really global trademark protection plan where we are, actively filing in, for protections in each country, which is really important considering, so many countries are first to file as the brand becomes more and more popular, and getting that done first can save you a lot of money down the line as opposed to having to contest other filings or whatnot. So that's one way that we've been doing that. As far as the merchandise side, we do have a service that crawls the web and issues takedown notices for companies that are not licensed to be selling FaZe gear. For large infringers and repeat infringers, we are not afraid to litigate in that area, and have even discussed having that be, kind of like a source of revenue. Yeah, we're not selling it, but if someone else is making a lot of money off that, we're not afraid to litigate on that front. Like Mary said, it can be, you have to balance, okay, is this just like one person who's a mega fan who made themselves a hat or something like that, and then what does that mean to go after them as opposed to not, and what's a good use of your resources, and what does that look like? And same with the use of the FaZe name. A lot of people in video games will call themselves FaZe name, and technically that could be problematic. So understanding, keeping your fans engaged and rewarding that behavior and being involved with them, keeping the press element in check, while at the same time maintaining protection and being really cognizant of how that works, is something we're thoughtful about as well.
I can imagine. I feel like I've seen hundreds of FaZeClan tags across the internet as of recently with Call of Duty and the different games alike. I feel like every day I'm playing with a new FaZe member, and it's funny to hear kids who interact and be like, "Oh my God, are you FaZe so-and-so?" And it's never FaZe so-and-so. Okay, so from there, just transitioning on to, because I know we're starting to get a little bit shorter on time and there's a lot to cover. A big conversation topic, I think, in the industry as a whole has been kind of the platform deals, talent acquisitions kind of going on. I feel like a lot of it started with Ninja going to Mixer. Twitch has, acquired a lot of talent themselves, YouTube with their own strategy. I wanted to open this up, Kevin, with your guys' talent acquisition strategy again, from what you can share. Do you think these, I guess, platform wars, so to say, are going to continue to go on for a while? Because I will say, I think, Twitch has done a great job, and you said this earlier, with their community. Twitch's community is fantastic. I think a lot of people are on Twitch for the community aspect. And, I think it is a place where a lot of streamers go to grow. So, from what you can say, what's been the conversation, I guess, around the platform wars, and do you think it'll settle down anytime soon?
Yeah, I think when Ninja left, we put out a statement about, we value our creators, right? I think what Twitch has really been focused on initially and continues to focus on is being a creator first, creator friendly environment where you can come and grow and you can stream on Twitch and you can engage with your audience and the community. And so, that's really our engagement model, right? Is we're continuing to try and figure out what makes the most sense for our creators, right? And for Twitch as a service as a a whole. So I mean, whether or not like these streamer wars will continue to happen or whatnot, I mean, I don't know, right? I mean, it played out with the YouTubers, right? Over the past couple of years before, and when there were other players in the space with Go90 and Vessel and some other companies out there, you'll probably see it with TikTokers, right, going forward too, right? And so I think whenever there's talent, I guess is that on the creative side, on the creator side, right? Whether that be Hollywood in the 60s or YouTubers or Twitch streamers or whatever it might be, like, you as a creator like understand the value that you bring because you have this engaged audience. You create this amazing content that people want to engage with, and so obviously there's going to be people that want to reward you for that talent and that the content that you create. And so I think we continue to focus on that. That these creators are looking out for their own benefits, which makes sense, right? And we value and we want to be creator first and creator friendly. So.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. It really depends on, I think, where the talent is in their career and what they're prioritizing. For example, we work with a couple of NBA players who, like I said, who are building brands in gaming. And one of them, I won't say who, and I won't say the platform, but received a really lucrative offer to leave Twitch and go stream on another platform, and tried it out for a little bit, but ultimately did that and was streaming for a small fraction of the community that he was streaming for on Twitch. Like the mass majority of his fans did not come with him. And he was in a position where he didn't really have to make a pure financial decision. He was looking at gaming more as a brand building tool and a way to engage his audience. And so for him, it didn't really make sense. The money didn't outweigh the value of streaming for 10% of who you were streaming for before. So I think that's the thing that excites me about Twitch is just the ability to build brand and build community there, and the fact that it's just where so many eyeballs are.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we want to compete not just on price, right? We want to compete on our products, our services, that we do offer best in class, service. Like we launch products all the time. We have an engaged audience, and we want to lean in on our community and lean in on the product that we actually build and ship. And so, I think that's the increasing focus of like where we are in our engagement model, like what makes sense for you as a creator. And we understand that people make purely financial decisions. That's understandable. And, we want to compete on more than just that. So.
And you guys are doing a good job. Moving on to in-game events. In-game events have become really popular. I think Fortnite has definitely kind of created a new path here for this. With Marshmello creating an in-game concert, Deadmau5 recently, obviously with Travis Scott, we brought up earlier. So Mary, I wanted to open this one up for you. Do you foresee Activision kind of engaging more with talent? Is there, as to what you can say, an interest for in-game content? There's, plenty to do, and I feel like with Warzone as popular as it is, what's your view on this?
Yeah, I mean, this one is it's almost even sort of game specific across, if you think about Activision, Blizzard, and King and all the different kinds of games. I know one of the things, if you talk to the developers, that's really important to them is, does this make sense in the actual environment of the particular game? Like, what kind of game is this? What is the community associated with the game? Does this have relevance to the game? There's Call of Duty that has a very different vibe than the Fortnite of the world. And again, we have actually kind of quite a bit of history. If you think about going back with Call of Duty and you think of in-game characters where we've had real life actors, etc., participate and be characters in our game. Those things do come with legal implications. You in the video game space, where you think about, as we're talking, you've got esports, you've got streamers, you've got all of these different places where you end up seeing the IP. A lot of times talent aren't necessarily interested in granting perpetual rights or granting the developer kind of carte blanche in terms of what to do with their character. And from like a development standpoint, trying to demonstrate to a particular celebrity or talent all of the different ways in which a player can manipulate the character, those things get difficult. I know with Fortnite, they're taking a different approach, right, with the concerts and what have you in the game. sometimes it's just a matter of technical constraints. Like, can you even have that many people, watch a particular game event on one server at a time or multiple servers? So I think there's all those different things to consider, and it's certainly an opportunity area for the video game space and peripherally for esports that I'm sure with the success that Fortnite's been having, every publisher is taking a look at.
I mean, I'd love to see the Foo Fighters maybe playing Warzone sometime. Jason, on your end with the production end and working with kind of the development of productions, do you think these in-game events will get to a point where they kind of transform how live events work and different events in esports and the gaming community kind of start to develop in tandem with in-game events, whether it's Fortnite or however else?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Conor. I think it's actually started to. I think it has been for quite some time. In-game events, as Mary mentioned, and I'm a big Call of Duty fan myself, and actually seeing the cinematic value behind playing the solo campaigns. If you've never played it, it's like watching a movie and being a part of it, right? And so what that does is actually initiates active engagement into the game. If we see things like the things that Fortnite is doing with Party Royale or Party Island, the DJ Marshmallow event you mentioned, the Travis Scott, all of that really kind of leans into this idea of a greater metaverse outside of the physical location being actually actively involved. And we're going to see that, Fortnite, I know we're talking a lot about Fortnite, but Fortnite in December of last year debuted a clip of their then new Star Wars movie in-game with close to 12 million people watching. And so we're going to see more of that. Are we going to see it in a physical location? Probably. I think there is going to be a crossover. What does it look like right now? I don't know. But I think right now what is happening, at least from my observation, with the use case of Fortnite, which is obvious, and then other areas, that crossover of esports is actually bleeding more into larger entertainment, both live and digital, and the way that's being consumed, the way it's being viewed from the player's eyes. It's being viewed from those that are watching the players on networks like Twitch, like YouTube, and those sort of things like that. And so you're adding these layers of entertainment in between. I think that's only going to increase, even to the point where you could, in theory, be in the stadium watching live competitions and actually be brought into the game. As Mary mentioned, developers are limited in how much they're able to do and how much time they have to do that. But I imagine that that's where the tide is shifting.
I think you brought up a great point earlier too in this conversation. And for those who don't know, Fortnite created an island in game actually called Party Island, to where they are hosting events, maybe for those who are missing on Coachella this year or something else like that. But I think that'll be an interesting development within the games industry in the future is what type of in-game content is created too around these different partnership activations and what's made available. So with that, I wanted to discuss a little bit, on the topic of concerts and game, music licensing and copyright issues that have kind of surfaced throughout the industry, and just kind of touch on that a little bit. Kevin, hate to, but also want to open this up to you. How have you guys been developing on your end in terms of with Twitch and, copyright music usage? I know, a lot of streamers are playing their favorite musicians right now. And to be honest, I'm not even quite sure how it's regulated. So what's that kind of looking like on your guys' end right now?
Yeah, I mean, Twitch operates as a UGC platform, right? And so we comply with the U.S. law currently, right, which is Section 230 and the DMCA safe harbor protections. So we operate a notice and takedown scheme, right? So if a copyright holder or the owner of the IP, issues an infringement claim on particular content, we'll take it down. And the creator obviously has the ability, like under the DMCA and our DMCA guidelines, to file a counterclaim. And so that's really kind of the scheme that we operate currently. There's obviously a lot of news currently with Section 230, and that we're monitoring very closely. But at this time, it's still a notice and takedown scheme. And so generally, like any other UGC platform, right, all clearances in terms of licenses and third-party rights are pushed down to the creator themselves. So they are responsible for clearing all of the content the content that they choose to stream, whether that be music or clips of movies or whatever it might be. So the responsibility is on the creator. So.
Erika, with the house of some of the largest creators in the world within gaming, another thing for people who don't know is FaZeClan has gained a lot of acknowledgement in the space for helping to blow up many creators such as hip hop artist Logic, some other DJs that have come up because of FaZeClan integrating their music into what has been iconic content in the gaming world through their videos called ill camps, which are essentially highly produced cinematic 2 to 3 minute gaming clips. And they've always integrated really cool music, up and coming music. But Erika, on your guys' end, have the guys been kind of encountering a lot of issues with copyright claims, or how are they approaching kind of the music front on their end? Has that been an issue with some of the creators?
Well, part of the value that being part of an org like ours brings is that we help with that professionalization. So when we're executing deals and we're working with them to create content, a lot of times with our in-house production team, that's part of the education process that we are able to help with. As far as blowing up artists and that kind of thing, it's obviously a very collaborative space, and a lot of these people these celebrities are like true hardcore gamers, like Offset. He is like such a gamer, and so to have a place where you can come and have that be cool and cross brand generally works out well for everyone. If we like their content and they like our content, it generally works out for everyone.
Yeah, and I can't necessarily speak to the legal side or how that breaks down, but I think something interesting is we're seeing interesting workarounds, and we're seeing gaming creators even get into the music space to help kind of create royalty free music and help sort of circumvent this. Jericho, who Conor, I believe you guys represent, has his own record label because he saw firsthand as a streamer how difficult it is to get to play music. And I know Ninja did an album with Astroworks called Ninja Works. So I think, again, I can't speak to it on the legal side, but I do think we're seeing this interesting wave of creators finding creative ways to play music on their streams without getting anyone in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to speak to the legal side necessarily either, but I do think there's opportunities there to create. If you are a creator, you're a Twitch streamer, you're a YouTuber, whatever it might be, right? And you are interested in music, right? This is a direct way to engage with an audience, right? Whether that be uploading VODs that you create, upload videos that you create, of music that you create, or stream on Twitch, right? So you'll see a lot of music streamers on Twitch that are really directly engaged with their audience and creating new music, right? So, we'll see how whether the popularity continues to stay, post COVID, but I think it's a great opportunity if you're a musician or if you're a gaming creator and interested in music to, really dabble into that. So.
Hey, Conor, I saw a Q&A on this music topic where someone asked if in connection with moving to sort of live streaming, are we encountering any specific music licensing issues? So I can speak a little bit to that on our side. I think yes is the answer. I think one of the interesting things, Kevin pointed it out, that's a little different than in traditional distribution platforms, public performance, comes into play. And traditionally the broadcaster, or in traditional sports, the venue covers the public performance pieces. So I think that's one where it's a watch out for anyone that's out there creating content, is to consider, does the platform cover the public performance? If not, how do you get coverage on your own or not? Decide to take a risk. And, I will say, other than that, generally speaking, it's the same licensing issues that you would have in the traditional space. You have to determine whether or not you need a sync and a master license. Sometimes if it's literally just a live performance, which is pretty rare, because at least from our standpoint, we like to take the matches and recut them up and create additional content associated with it. But in the rare exception where you may be just literally live streaming, there may not be a need for the sync and the master license, because you're just literally live streaming it. But those are some of the issues that we've come across.
Cool. Again, keeping an eye on time. As we mentioned earlier, and I think I'm going to try to get to some of these Q&As also towards the end, because there's some good questions here. But with leagues, the way that they're structured, earlier I brought up that we'd kind of touch on the structures, franchise versus non-franchise leagues. And Mary, I kind of just wanted to open this to you because you guys kind of, I think, were the first mover here with the Overwatch League and now with Call of Duty in creating a much more structured league system with the franchise teams. What are some of the pros and cons and some of the setbacks that you guys have seen? And overall, do you think it's working instead of having the more open structured league structure?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons we went where we went, and one of the things that we thought about at the very outset of all of this, is we are in esports in a very unique situation, because in traditional sports, no one owns basketball, no one owns baseball, no one owns hockey. And so other than market advantage, et cetera, maybe limited talent pool, there's nothing stopping competitive leagues popping up. But in the esports space, the underlying game is owned by the relative publishers associated with each game. And in trying to figure out a way to really lean into the esports business model, we were thinking that a lot of the teams out there and players out there didn't have any assurances that tomorrow there's going to be a tournament available for them to play in. And this was a way for us to actually open up for true investment that you felt like you could put money behind and have staying power by giving teams actual slots and buying into the league and getting an affirmative license that coexists with the length of the league. And so that's why we went there. Now, I don't think it's the end all be all. We haven't done it across all of our esports activities. We've got Hearthstone, we've got World of Warcraft, StarCraft is, of course, one of the premier sort of esports out there, or premier, I should just say, founding esports out there. So I think it's one model. I don't think it's the only model. And I think that piece of it has allowed sort of larger dollar investments coming into the OWL and CDL ecosystems as opposed to some of the others.
Definitely. And Jason, on the production side, do you find it to be easier, I guess on your end, one way or the other, working with different leagues in terms of creating events? Is there a difference?
In what regard? In the IP rights of things?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're uniquely positioned. We are not IP holders ourselves. We're not IP creators ourselves, and we work with IP holders. And so anytime that we've engaged in creating a production, it's largely with folks on this panel. And they're giving us, depending on the nature of the relationship, either single use rights or ongoing rights, depending on like the length of the contract that we're working together. From a TL perspective, from a tournament organizer and operator perspective, it's a little bit easier for us than I know for others that are trying to actually create their own events using someone else's IP.
Yeah. And then just to close this out, for the future of kind of leagues and where they're going, Mary, to your point, I think non-endemic partners and sponsors coming in, and for those who also don't know on joining us, sponsorship revenue is still accounting for roughly around 40% of the revenue within esports. And I think there's a bit of a hesitation for them to get involved with, especially more open leagues, because, you know, there's already hesitation, I think, around kind of some titles in esports in general. And then have you guys seen on your end, you know, this being the way to go if, you know, if esports were to become more legitimized? Do you think it needs to be franchised and non-franchised in terms of league structures, or is it still to be determined, like you said?
Was that one for me?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Or whoever else wants to.
Yeah, I think from a sponsorship standpoint, actually, you know, while I think there are definitely benefits to the league structure because there's more structure around it, I think sponsors have really a lot of different opportunities outside of the true franchise league places. I mean, they can go to the player, you know, they can go to the FaZeClans of the world. And so I think maybe at most what the league structure did for some sponsors is just open their eyes a little bit to the esports industry. But I don't really think of sponsors being fixated on whether or not there's a franchise element to it or not. And in some respects, there's probably flexibility, if not maybe a little lower dollar, you know, associated with it when you go directly to a team or directly to a player. I mean, I think there's advantages when you think about it, at least the way the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League have approached it, where you can kind of get the whole ecosystem all at once, or at least you have controlled rights with respect to, am I going to see, if I'm Coke, am I going to see Pepsi tomorrow in essentially the same tournament because I'm going to a player or I'm going to a team? So I think that's one advantage you have with the more structure. But some sponsors, I think, have really benefited from going more grassroots and going from the player up.
I think another thing too that the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League have done really well, in my opinion, at least if we're thinking about emulating, you know, traditional sports, is like the geographically based organizations, and which I think, you know, at scale you can really galvanize your local community and really build a fan base amongst, you know, the residents in your region. And I think from a sponsorship standpoint, it probably makes it a little bit easier to understand who you're reaching and who to target. For example, if you're a brand that has a huge presence in the Southeast, you know, maybe you want to target a team that's focused in that, as opposed to leagues where they're not geographically based and you sort of have everyone from all over the place, and maybe you want to be a little bit more targeted with your dollars.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's easier, or in some ways it's easier to build a narrative. I think the last thing I kind of want to bring up on this topic is, you know, with the higher buy-in amounts to be a part of the franchise league, is it a concern at all for teams who might have a legacy in a particular title to possibly not participate in being a part of a league if going forward with a franchise structure?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously a significant investment that's required, but it kind of goes hand in hand with that origin concept that we had, which is that this is something that's more of a long-term play, that, you know, you have rights associated with it, and that tomorrow it's not going to kind of get pulled away from you. So I think it does present a little bit of a barrier to entry. But I would say if you look at the way a lot of teams have structured their ownership groups, there's opportunities for the endemic teams to still participate, whether it's partnering with other owners to put together an ownership group, and or, you know, just simply participate in the standpoint of, there's been endemics that have operated teams, so even though they're not owners, they actually join forces from a contractual standpoint, and they've done the competitive operations. So I think there's actually a lot of still opportunity. And what the leagues have also done, at least on the Overwatch League and Call of Duty League side, is they have these minor league ecosystems that the more endemic brands that haven't wanted to or haven't been able to participate at the pro league level, they're still participating at that level, feeder system into the pro league, and they're still able to kind of cross utilize their IP in those minor leagues across other competitive video games, which is a difference between the pro side, or at least the Overwatch League and Call of Duty League. I know League of Legends, for example, has taken a very different approach, and they have the Pro League where teams aren't necessarily using branding that's dedicated to the particular, LCS, for example. So I think there's still a variety of entry points for the endemic brands, for the smaller companies out there that don't want to spend or have the ability to spend on the entry fee price for, at least for the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League.
Right. There's still ways to stay creatively involved with the process and operationally still be involved. There's a question here from Peter that's kind of in line with what we're talking about right now. He's asking, do you think that esports teams will be treated as a quote unquote professional athletic team in the legal tax aspect? How do you think that will affect esports moving forward?
Whoa, way outside my expertise. I will say this though, just like I'll answer it in a very generic way, which is the question kind of comes up across a variety of places, immigration, gambling laws, all kinds of places where when they reference sports or they reference athletes, are esports included, not included? And I've seen it go all different ways depending on the particular regulation or the particular law. And certainly I have no idea the answer on the tax front. but I think you have to sort of look at the particular area, and sometimes it works to our advantage to be included, and sometimes it works to our disadvantage actually to be included. I think in Europe, for example, there's some media rights restrictions that come along with being considered a sport. And again, in the immigration space, sometimes it's an advantage to be folded into the professional athlete / sports category. So it really depends. It's a non-answer.
It was a good non-answer.
I mean, this is all public knowledge. I'm not saying anything, but I've seen like a couple like threads on Twitter from just people in the industry as well as like esports athletes themselves about the need for like a union, and the need for protection there, some sort of standardized way to do that, which I think is interesting and something that we see in all major sports. Yeah,
and I think tangential to that is with esports being so young in terms of the competition aspect, and again, unfortunately, I feel like are a lot of minors competing in it. There are just issues that kind of are derivatives of that. So on that note, a question from Jeffrey is, how do you deal with dispute resolution, particularly in agreements with players or teams to participate in leagues or events? And then separate question on top of that is to address disciplinary issues involving cheating, doping, match fixing, to deal with sponsorship and licensing disputes. I don't know if this is in any of our wheelhouse, but if anyone wants to try to take a stab at that, go for it. Or I can repeat that. That was a long-winded question.
I feel like these keep coming back to me.
I think
Erika, do you want to talk about it from a player standpoint?
Yeah, from a player standpoint, I think this might kind of lead into a conversational topic too. It's like, to Matt's point, players kind of creating a union to protect themselves. And I think an issue, on my end and as well maybe on some of yours as well, is like, how can representation and more formal teams around some of these younger players, I think, change the way that it develops. I mean, this is tricky on my end to even touch on. So do you guys see a way in which, I think we can address the younger players, pro players, and content creators as a whole to kind of make it a better environment for them? Not to say that it's not a good environment, but I don't know. I feel like these issues keep coming up. So,
Erika?
As far as if we can make this a better environment for per people.
Yeah. With player disputes and.
So some of these issues like cheating, doping, match fixing, gambling, those are included, restrictions on that are included in like the tournament or league agreements. So that gets passed on to us, and then we pass that along to our players too. So that kind of trickles down. I think that part of that is the education and management of the players to make sure that they understand what they should and shouldn't be doing. And then to the extent that that's violated, we need to decide what the most effective way of addressing that is.
I think
and I can chime in and just trying to not, it seems like I want to make sure everyone else gets to chime in. I think different publishers have addressed this very differently. I think just like other commercial transactions and other relationship transactions, it's very typical for companies to use arbitration in connection with these things. And at least from our standpoint, we have a variety of published rules that govern all of those aspects. And we did try, in connection with both the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League, very much from the outset, the way we structured them, to balance sort of three different pieces of the ecosystem: the player, the team, and the league. And we required certain benefits be provided to the players. We made sure that there were contracts that were entered into between teams and players, and then we have rules that we try to enforce and work with our teams to educate the players around. So that's the way we've approached it.
I mean, as a non-publisher developer, non-team owner, non-player person, I mean, I would say that like some of the dispute stuff, I mean, like I think Riot's done a good job of being very public with some of the, the issues that happen in LCS, right? And so they'll specifically like talk about, issues and how that's resolved. So as an audience member, I think it's outside the legal angle, like what Mary said, arbitration is still pretty common for, I would assume, in a lot of the agreements that the leagues and the teams have with the players. But I think from a consumer perspective, I think Riot's been really good about kind of being very open and transparent about how they resolve player issues and acting quickly on some of that and investigating it as well. So
I think just good about how like being thoughtful and reasonable and how you approach players and disputes and is really important, because especially where everything is so decentralized, it's not like the players are getting drafted to teams, they're selecting between teams, and so we are competitive with one another. So being reasonable and thoughtful and fair in how we deal with any complaints that arise and flexible is to the team's advantage. And then as far as our other dispute resolution issues, something that's kind of interesting that comes up is we are so international. So issues like where disputes will get resolved and why can be really interesting.
Definitely. Well, we're running out of time here with about 5 minutes left. I think something that is interesting to kind of touch on, and as we close out here, is on the topic of esports and gaming being such a much younger audience in demo in terms of the participants, the players, and also the consumers of the content. I think there's been a lot of conversation recently with high school leagues and events and collegiate, development and participation with scholarships being announced for esports and different titles. I kind of want to make this a little bit more open, but Jason, starting off with you on the event side, do you think that there will be an opportunity here in a big way for the collegiate scene or the high school scene with championship events, et cetera? Because I know right now largely schools are scrambling to get computers together and figure out what this is. I remember I had someone reach out to me and ask how to set up a gaming setup because they had a competition in 2 weeks. I don't think they have any help on the production end, and I think this is something that could become very scalable in the future. Already has been with companies like PlayVersus raising, I believe, around 190 million to help develop a league and structure around high schools. So curious what your thoughts are here, quickly as we kind of close out. But
Yeah. So very quickly, I mean, this is, I think Mary mentioned it early on in the conversation. These are things that have been happening now for a greater part of a decade, which were tournaments that were occurring. We just happen to know a little bit more about it now, right? Because it's extreme. I think the other part of it too is that as that continues to ramp up, students I remember my days of being a college student long time ago, where we would have LAN parties and we would play different games, doing that. And whether or not we were playing it for some sort of seeding or bracket tournament, we were doing it basically in the same competitive manner. Then when you start seeing conferences, and you mentioned universities, but you also see conferences like the ECAC, who recently is the Northeast kind of conference with a handful of liberal arts schools that are actually sanctioning these kind of larger tournaments amongst other universities. You're going to see more and more of this. And I know also a lot of the publishers are leaning into that demographic. To what extent, depending on the title, it really depends on what actually makes the most sense. But, rest assured, this is already happening. It's just a matter of, is there a governing body that is building a structure like the NCAA or anybody else that's trying to capture that organization?
Right. And I think, hopefully we're transitioning towards more structure as a whole around a lot of things that we've talked about here today. I know this year, probably a popular question with all the kids staying home is, okay, now where do I find a gaming tutor? How can I help educate? And I think education will become a very important topic for not just kids, but for parents, because my kid's obsessed with gaming. I can't do anything about it. How do I help them at least, be on the right path to, whether it's creating content, competing in different tournaments, competitions, or joining their favorite organization like FaZeClan. On that note, I wanted to thank everyone here. It's been really interesting, and I think hopefully educational for everyone. And I think we answered most of the questions in the Q&A. Debbie?
Thank you, all of you, so much for joining us. I thought it was a terrific, very comprehensive presentation. I know I enjoyed it, and for everybody else, thank you for joining us. And I hope everyone stays healthy, safe, and let's see if some of you get involved with esports.
Yeah, and I'd like to just quickly chime in again to say that, again, my thanks on behalf of both the entertainment section and the bar to all of our presenters today for participating and jumping in. We're happy to have you back for more topics. Anybody who's watching this, feel free to let myself or anybody on the XCOM know if there's something that you'd like us to discuss that wasn't covered here today, and maybe we can build a panel or a program around it. We've got, I think, a lot of things that we can talk about. So yeah, feel free. My email is greg@gaztaxlaw.com. So feel free to shoot me an email or just email us. You can look up the XCOM on the bar website as well and send us an email there. But thank you all very much for coming out today and giving us your time. We greatly appreciate it.